I feel since my initiations, there is so much more calm in my body, so much more groundedness, relaxation, and also this knowing that life always has our backs, because look at how I ended up there. Nobody could have ever planned that out. That was just something else, arranging that. Welcome to the Seeing in the Dark podcast, the podcast for the women of the ancient futures, women that see beyond eyes and know beyond mind and are here to make a change from a deep communion with the mystery of life. Seeing in the Dark is about walking paths that have not been walked before and daring to show up for the mission and dream life that is knocking on your door. My name is Nicole Nima Costeres, mystic, medium, initiated priestess, and here to take you into the mysteries of purpose, power, ritual, and intuition. May you embody your own unique essence so deeply that your vibration naturally teaches, inspires, and assists others. Let's dive in. Hi everyone, welcome to this week's episode where we're going to dive into everything you want to know about my initiations in Benin, West Africa. This year I had 2 months in Benin, West Africa, in the capital of Vodou, Ouidah. And in these 2 initiations, I had such a wide variety of ceremonies, of rituals, of learning invocations, symbols, working with the spirits, working with herbs, with plant beds. And I've received so many curiosities and questions that I decided to invite these 3 beautiful women, Ankie de Wert from the Netherlands, Jona Berchner from Germany, and Leborgne from France. Welcome, ladies. I feel super happy that you are here with me today. And in a moment, we're going to open the space for you to basically ask me anything you want about initiations and my time in Benin. And before we do so, maybe the first thing that I would like to touch upon is to share a little bit about what are initiations actually. Yeah, because I think that all of us have heard from initiations. Maybe we heard from Reiki initiations or initiations into a certain tradition or a certain method or methodology. And I would say the most simple explanation I can give about an initiation is like a welcoming or an entrance into a field of energy. I don't know if that's a very clear explanation, but that's what it felt like for me. The moment where I was welcomed into the tradition of African Vodou, I felt I was entering into a whole new field with new qualities, with new flavors, with new gifts and powers in there. And I imagine, I'm not baptized, but I imagine, for example, when you get baptized in a church, that it's the same, that you enter into a certain field of energy that matches a certain tradition or a certain methodology, and it almost immerses you into the field of that tradition. So that's my short explanation on how I've experienced initiation. I mainly just want to give you the space to follow your curiosity and ask me anything that you would like to know about my time in Benin.
Well, if I may start, I'm very curious about, it feels a bit like, I know you were on a search for somebody who could learn you something about the Vodou tradition. And then you met your mother and she was willing to teach you that. And then I saw a video where you were sitting and you were throwing stones. Was it like to get clear on what your initiation should be, or where did it all start? How did they find out where you would be initiated in?
Yeah, beautiful question. So when I traveled to Benin in January, I didn't plan on doing an initiation. I was actually planning to go on a 14-day tour around Benin, which was a touristic tour in connection to Vodou, but it was not an initiation. It wasn't planned. So through a set of synchronicities that I also share about in the episode, How Did I End Up in Benin Studying African Vodou? I share about how through some crazy synchronicities, I met my voodoo mother, Martine de Souza. The moment I arrived in Ouida, I just started crying. It was like my body arrived home in a place that I recognized somehow. And the moment I met Martine, my voodoo mother, I also started crying. And she said, if you want, I can provide the initiations for you. And there was just something inside of me that said, yes, I am meant to do this. So I extended my stay. I changed my ticket. And 2 weeks later, I was in her house to start my first initiation. And the whole initiation path basically started with my Ifa ceremony. So in Yoruba, so in Nigeria, they call it Ifa. And in Benin, they call it Fa, but it's the same system. Basically, it's the oracle system that consults the spirits. And through this consultation, you can reveal your voodoo identity. So you can almost compare it with astrology, how we can be a Sagittarius, or human design, how you can be a manifesting generator or projector. You have a similar system in voodoo, which is called your Ifa. And to reveal your Ifa, you need to go through a set of rituals. And where you saw me work with the stones, like there was like, I don't actually know how many of them, but there is a point during this ceremony where you need to grab the stones. And only when there is 1 or 2 left in your hand, it creates a certain symbol. And the symbol that reveals, so you do that 8 times, that symbol reveals one of the 256 voodoo identities. Yes. It turned out that my voodoo identity was one that had all 41 voodoo spirits. So the moment where my identity was revealed, they said, who are you? Like, you are a priestess. This is a priestess sign, and you have to do your initiation. So it was all just, I think a lot of the time in the beginning, I wasn't fully understanding what was happening. It was just like something picked me up and kind of carried me through the whole thing. But it all made so much sense. But it all started with that identity reveal, where they recommend certain foods that you can or cannot eat, or they recommend certain practices that you can or cannot do. And they mainly reveal which are your main spirits, which for me turned out to be all the spirits. However, one of the strongest was the spirit of the snakes. So my main initiation has been with the serpents, which I would say have a very similar energy to the Kundalini serpents that we know from more the Indian tradition. And this is what I also found over the years, is that there is all these different traditions on the planet, but actually the energies that they work with have so much similarities. Like the serpent energy that I experienced during my dieta with the Yawanawa tribe in the Brazilian Amazon was a very similar serpent energy that I experienced in my Tantra training, where we were working with Kundalini energy. And again, a very similar energy that I experienced during my isolation in the initiation in Benin with the serpents as well.
So you went in isolation, you said?
Yes, in the first initiation, after they revealed we're going to do your main initiation with the serpents, and then also they included fire and earth as well in my initiation, but I was in isolation for 6 days. So they basically put me in my room, and they made these really beautiful symbols on the floor, and they put a mat on top of it. And I was sleeping on the stone floor without a pillow, without a blanket. It was very difficult the first 2 nights because I'm so used to sleeping on soft things. You know, there in Benin, they're much more used to sleeping on the floor. But in order to connect to the spirits, especially the serpents, because they are on the ground, I had to sleep on the ground and spend as much time as possible on that mat in my room. So for the first 2 nights, I couldn't sleep well because the energy was very strong. It almost felt for me like being on ayahuasca without drinking plant medicine. The spirits were very strong, very beautiful experiences, and really feeling like I'm bathing in this energy of the serpents. And and during those days, someone would come and bring me food, but this was only the people that were assigned to do so. So nobody else was allowed to see me during these days. So the curtains were closed, the doors were closed. It wasn't dark, so it was light in the room during the day, but I was in isolation a lot of the time.
Were you supposed to do anything, or just being there, connecting to the spirit, or like did you had some instructions how to isolate?
Yes. So I could not be on my phone, obviously. It was a time offline and a time to really spend time with the spirits, be available for them if they want to come and visit. And in Voodoo, they work a lot with the spirits of nature. So it's the elements that are very strong. It's spirits of thunder and lightning, spirits of the earth. The serpents have both spirit of earth and air inside of them. There is spirits of the water, of sweet water and salt water. It's a tradition of nature. So they work a lot with these elements of nature. And I needed to be available. So I could sometimes draw or write a little bit, but mostly just be available for spirits to reveal anything they want to reveal to me.
I'm also curious, because you went 2 times for 2 initiations. And I'm curious if this is is this normal that there are 2, or normally it's in 1, but because you were traveling, you did it in 2 times, and how were they different?
Curious about beautiful that. Question. So the first initiation was to become a devotee or a follower of the tradition. Yeah. So it was one that was mainly spent in isolation. It was one where they didn't reveal so much like symbols or invocations. If I would ask about it, they would say, not now, this is not the moment. You will learn more about this later. Overall, they found me way too curious because I always ask questions and I want to know everything, and they were not used to that. They say if you were Beninese, we would not allow you to ask anything. But because I didn't grow up in this tradition, they also understood that I had to kind of catch up, because I didn't know anything. So, the first one is to enter into the tradition as a follower, you could say, or a devotee. And my second initiation was to become a priestess in the work. And the priestess initiation is different in the sense that there is much more studies. So there was not so much isolation, only 24 hours, but much more study. So I would learn invocations for the spirits. I would learn the symbols and their meaning, how to work with the symbols to offer someone a purification or to offer someone a healing. There were teachings about different herbs and plants and how to make herbal baths for people. There were different dances, different songs. So much more studying things on how I can support others from this tradition.
I have a question. You started, I'd like to give a definition. So you started about what is initiation, actually. And I would like to know what is the definition of a priestess according to the African perspective, because we hear priestess this and priestess that. What is a priestess and what is her role in the African tradition? And how do they envision that in now modern day, as you're not African, you're living in Europe? How is it going to help, like the rest of the world?
Yes. I totally agree with you. We see this word priestess everywhere. And they call me priestess there, but also they use it very simultaneously with the word chief. So my experience, and still I'm quite new with the tradition, so I don't know if I can give the full answer, but I can answer from my experience so far there, is that the priestesses are the ones that are there to support the healing or the development journey of another. Yeah, so what I've seen in Benin is that people come for consultation to the priest or priestesses. They come for divination. The priestesses do readings with the cowrie shells. This is also part of my studies. So the cowrie shells are these shells that are very important in the Voodoo tradition and also very important in the history of slavery because they represent liberation. They also were the currency in Benin before money was introduced. So these shells were used as the currency to buy things. So people come to the priestess when they are, for example, struggling with something. It could be that they want physical healing or purification. It could be that they struggle with an illness. It could be that they want to focus on manifesting something or creating something in their lives. And it might be for consultation, for a divination. Now, how they see it with me, this was one of the first things that was very important to me before I did my initiation. I said, I've always been a multi-passionate woman. I've never been from one tradition only. I always, follow my heart and my intuition, and it led me from studying with the Yawanawa people in the Brazilian Amazon to spending a total of 26 days completely by myself in the dark, to more like Western alternative therapy, like the journey, to art coaching. Like there is a big variety of work inside of me, and I wanted to be able to continue that. I said, I will not only practice this tradition, I want to be able to blend it with all my other knowledge. Is that okay? In many houses, that would not be okay, because a lot of the voodoo traditions are still very closed. So they're also quite secretive and closed, not very open for foreigners. But my voodoo mother is a very open woman. She actually does pranic healing herself, and she has this teacher in India. So she has a very open mind for other traditions and other methods and other ways of living and working. And she was also a tour guide before she became a voodoo priestess. So she knows other cultures and languages and ways of living really well. So I was lucky, I guess, to find a family that was very supportive of blending it with my other experience and knowledge.
And I'm curious, my question goes into the same direction, is like, what does it entail to be a crowned voodoo priestess now? Does it come with obligations or with commitments, responsibilities, anything like this? Like, did you commit to specific things, or do you have tasks now?
I don't really have specific tasks. I do have some foods that I cannot eat, but they are foods that we don't really have in the Netherlands. Like there were some specific animals that they eat a lot in Benin, but actually we don't really eat them here. So I was lucky that I don't really have any restrictions that I, would normally want to do or eat. And in terms of responsibilities, I am not that far into my studies that I offer other people initiations yet. It might be in the future. So it's after 3 or 4 years of practicing the studies that I received now that I can do my high priestess initiation. And that's where you are really educated to initiate others as well into the tradition. So in terms of responsibilities, I would say it's to respect the spirits, to spend time also at least once a week with the spirits. So what I did for a while is to sleep next to my altar once a week. I'm also not allowed to have sex once a week. This is on the Friday. And I actually enjoy that. I actually enjoy to have this one day a week to really devote myself to my connection with the spirits, but also, with my own intuition, and just have that day to do introspection and bring my offerings to my altar and just be available to listen.
Yeah, beautiful. Because I was already wondering, how does this or these initiations that affected you? How has it changed you? How has it changed the way you look at life now? And how you're going to bring it into your daily life?
Yeah, beautiful question. There's many layers to this, because the voodoo comes from my maternal lineage. So I didn't know anything about voodoo before, because I think a lot of people, when they hear voodoo, they think about black magic and voodoo dolls and needles, because this is how Hollywood, and the movie industry represents voodoo. When actually voodoo is a tradition of nature. It's about respecting nature. It's the indigenous tradition of Africa. And so food like dolls and needles aren't even part of the tradition in Benin. It doesn't exist there. There is a form of black magic, but it's not voodoo. It's called bo. And bo is a form where people can do evil things to one another. But inside voodoo, it's prohibited to hurt others. And actually, they very much believe in karma. So if you hurt another, it will come back to hurt you, you know, or if you try to take from another, you will lose something. Like it's very much, they have this very strong belief around karma. So I think, first of all, it was a big cleanse for me to see the similarities of indigenous traditions all over the world, because I spent my time in South America, now in West Africa, and I could see how what these indigenous traditions have in common is that when the colonization happened for all of them, they were forbidden to practice their practices. Yeah, so the Yawanawa people in the Brazilian Amazon, they had to shave their heads because they couldn't have long hair anymore. The men, they weren't allowed to drink their plant medicines anymore, to practice their ceremonies. And it's the same in West Africa. When the missionaries came, they said, your spirits are from the devil. You're not allowed to practice your tradition anymore. And they took away something from the people that gave them a lot of power, which then makes it so much easier to implement the colonial system. So I think it's a big brainwash that happened for many indigenous traditions. And for me, it was a big cleanse of that, of seeing, you know, of really reconnecting to the power and the love that is in indigenous traditions, the power of community, because there is so much togetherness in these indigenous traditions. They don't function as individual beings. They function as a group. And this is so, I learned so much from that. I remember one example where there's not really police in Benin. So there was a village where we went to, and the people that had done something, like one stole a coconut, one man hit his wife, and there were like a few other incidents, and they were all put into the center of 200 people in the village, and they were receiving their punishment, which there happens with like leafy sticks. So they kind of get like a few beatings, which were, I think, symbolically, because they didn't look like really hard beatings that they were like beaten, but it was more like symbolically. And after that, what is being done with people that have done something wrong is they're being brought into the temple, and they're being sang to and danced for, and they're being washed with herbs to cleanse them of their sin, so to speak, and to welcome them into a new chance and to bring them back into the community. And this is an example of how they function as a group, as a family. You know, there is so many problems in Benin. From over 40% of the people live in poverty. They make less than $2 a day. There's lots of children that end up in child trafficking. There is a lot of children that lost their parents due to sickness. And there's this one example where there's 3 kids and they lost their parents to AIDS. And Martine, my voodoo mother, she heard about these kids. She never met them before. And she arranges that her sister-in-law now raises these kids. You know, it's like, it's so group and so warm and so welcoming. Like, who does that? Just take in 3 kids that are like, one of them is already a teenager, and just take them in and take care of them as your own. And this is something that I feel that indigenous traditions, they hold some very important pieces that we in the West can learn so much from. The connection to community, the openness to each other, the sense of doing it together, the connection to nature, the connection to the spirit, to mythology, to magic, to the mystery. It's also a normal part of daily life there. And this is what really changed me permanently. You know, I wake up there and I hear the drums of ceremony in the morning, and I go to bed and they're still going on. So everywhere in town, there is always a ceremony or a ritual going on. And it's such a part of daily life. It's not something that they go to once a year in a retreat, you know, it's just part of their lives. So that was a big, big, big change in me. Also, this arriving home in my lineage, because my mom is from South America, Suriname, but originally my lineage is not from there. They were shipped from West Africa, and after doing a DNA test, I could see my DNA is from Nigeria, which is right next to Benin, but not safe to travel. So this is how I ended up in Benin. And a lot of the indigenous traditions that spread out from voodoo is Winti in Suriname, or Santeria in Cuba, or Candomblé in Brazil. They're all wavered out from this one tradition called voodoo in West Africa. And so for me, it was a deep homecoming. And also, I can still feel goosebumps when I share it, to walk the route that my ancestors walked on their way to board the ships and leave West Africa was really, really powerful. Because I thought I would be broken by sadness and pain. But instead, what I found was this incredible power of overcoming, because I could feel in each stage, because it was one of the main ports of slave trade was in Ouida, where I was. And they would go through these 7 stages before they would board the ships. And one of them was dark rooms where they would sit in for days without food to prepare them for the weeks on the ships in the dark. And another part is a mass grave where they were thrown into if they were too weak to continue. And another part is a tree of forgetfulness where they had to walk around and forget who they are and where they come from. And every stage that I would walk and feel, I could feel, wow, my ancestors decided to keep walking, and some of them were walking for months already before they arrived at that first stage there. And they decide to keep walking even though they see people dying around them. And they decide to keep walking even though they have no idea where they're going. And I found this incredible power of overcoming that is in my lineage as well. And I think many of us, when we connect to our ancestors, we can feel all the pain that happened. We all have our own stories and our own lineage with our own, like ancestral trauma in there. But I also know now that all of us have an incredible power of overcoming in our lineage as well, because it's the reason why we are here. It's our ancestors that decided to keep going, to keep walking, and that's why we are here. And that is something that also changed me from the inside out. Very powerful. It felt like my bones were breathing out when I arrived in Ouida. Like something just home.
Yeah.
Yeah. And also because of this sign that I had in my identity, it was just like my soul knew that I'm a voodoo priestess, and I had to go there. It just all made so much sense. So I think I have this deeper sense of home, a deeper sense of being okay with who I am, because I always had also a little bit these out of the box interests, that people sometimes maybe found a bit strange, like voodoo, like people find it sometimes a bit strange, like what is that? Or like she goes into complete darkness for 12 days and nights. It's all a bit out of the box. And I think I was able to fully embrace those aspects of myself, to not feel like strange or that I'm working with, sitting in a dark room, or just more, acceptance of who I am. And also this motivation to change the world's view about what these indigenous traditions are really about. Yeah, and how much love there actually is in there.
Beautiful. May I ask, I don't know if you can tell something about it, but how does voodoo actually work? I mean, I hear you talk about herbs, about bath, about ceremonies, but when somebody comes and asks for help and you help them with voodoo, what actually happens? Energetic realm and
Yeah, beautiful. So one example is they work with the spirits of nature. So when they work with the herbal baths, they very much work with the power that each plant spirit has. So they don't see the plant as just a plant, they see the plant as a being that has certain qualities and power and has a spirit and is alive and can support someone on their journey. So they're very connected to the spirit in everything, very connected to the spirit in humans, in plants, in animals, in beyond. But I feel they also help to, for example, become more clear about who you are. So when you reveal your identity and I hear, oh, the snake spirits are very strong in me, they also explain what that means. Like there are certain qualities of purity, of transformation, of, they explain what these spirits mean and how they are represented in my body, in my being. And so it helps to find a deeper understanding of which elements or forces of nature are alive in me or you. I would say it helps to really respect nature also, to really respect the spirit and the spirit world, to really also respect the unseen, the things we don't see. They're very in connection to that. And also to make transformation tangible. And this is something also that I speak a lot about in Rites of Passage in the 4-week program for ritual and ceremony. When we go through a transformation, this can happen inside of us, but I feel when you ritualize a transformation, it makes it tangible because you physically go through a transformation moment. So whether it's through standing in the symbols while you do a ritual, the symbols have an energetic power, have an energetic code, you could say, that you step into. But then also just the fact that you take the time to prepare that space of the ritual, to step into that space of the ritual, to physically, through movement and singing and dancing, going through that moment, I feel they are very physical in their transformation. Yeah. So one other example is I studied mediumship for 3 years in an English tradition, which is much more Western and much more mental. So when I do a reading through or a connection with the spirits through English mediumship, it's much more through the psychic abilities or through the mental, you could say. And when you connect to the spirits in Vodou, it goes through the body. So you welcome the spirits to the dance and to the body and to the physical trance work. And in that sense, I would say it's a tradition that works very much with the body.
I'm curious because you were mentioning that it's quite similar to other earth traditions, like in South America, or so I'm curious, like how is it different or similar to traditions in Europe? Maybe like shamanic traditions that we had, or witchcraft, like where do you see similarities or differences?
Yeah, beautiful. I think all of the indigenous traditions have similarities and differences. Yeah, so for example, in Vodou, they don't work with psychedelic plants, for example, like they do in the South American and indigenous traditions a lot. But what they all have in common, and I feel including the European witchcraft or shamanic traditions, is this deep connection to earth and to nature and to plants, to spirits. And what they all have in common also is that these people were called witches or were burned at the stake or were rejected or demonized. This is also in Europe, same thing. What they have in common, also in the European shamanic traditions, they work a lot with the herbs. They work a lot with the rituals. They work a lot with the spirit of animals and plants. So I think these are the biggest things that they have in common. And even though the specifics of rituals, like in African American Vodou, they work a lot with preparing candles to do candle magic, and they work with the herbs in the candles. In Vodou, same. They work a lot with the candles, intention in the candles. But also in the European shamanic traditions, you see this a lot, where they roll the candles in the herbs and they work with intention for the candles. So even in the specifics of the rituals, we can see a lot of similarities in these earth traditions.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
When I see rituals, they look so complex. Sometimes there's a lot of elements. I've seen Hindu and Vodou also. Are you going to practice this way, or are you allowed to make it your way? So it's your way, and also it's easier maybe to practice in Europe as you live in Europe.
Yeah, so I would say that the rituals I've experienced, they didn't feel that complicated. But I have to say that most of the ceremonies that are being done for me during my initiations, I am not present at. So they come together with the priests, like a big group of priests come together and they make all the rituals for me. And I'm actually only part and present at a small amount of them. The ones that I've been present at, they were not super complicated. However, I cannot literally copy paste them to Europe because practically, for example, they work with gunpowder, for example. They make rituals and they light the gunpowder to complete the ritual. I cannot do that here because it's illegal. Practical things like that, I cannot copy paste. There's definitely space to make it my own in terms of working with the herbs that I have here in this country that maybe don't grow in Benin. So in that sense, there is flexibility. But I would not change symbols, for example. I would use the symbols as how they were teaching me. And I used the invocations that I studied in their language because they first wanted to teach me in English. I said, no, I want to learn them in Fon. I want to learn the traditional language for them because that feels so much more powerful. So those things I will not tweak and change. However, they very much encouraged me that if I want to create my own ritual for something and I feel a certain symbol, to allow that as well. So they very much encouraged the power of your own intuition as well. But I would not necessarily tweak and change the things that I've learned. I think they're really powerful because Voodoo is a tradition that is over 6,000 years old. So imagine for 6,000 years drawing a certain symbol, how much power there is in that symbol, right? So I don't want to tweak that because it's been carried like that from generation to generation for over 6,000 years. And this is one of the reasons why I love indigenous traditions or ancient traditions like this, because there's things being passed on from generation to generation to generation that are just really, really powerful. I hope that answers your question.
I have another question about how this journey helped you to put more into your understanding of leadership, as you're teaching a lot about leadership and concept. Is there something else that this tradition added to your understanding of being a leader?
Beautiful. Yeah, beautiful question. Before my initiations, I felt very strongly connected to Kundalini energy. So my Kundalini started awakening since 2016. I didn't always have an easy journey with that. So my body has been having periods of struggling a lot with that. And I think what really landed deeper is to be fully okay with all the power that is in this Kundalini or serpent energy in my body. So it helped me to stand even more for what I believe in, to allow more of power or my power or power that is maybe not even personal. And like I said, because I had this big cleanse of, oh, maybe this is too intense for people, what I'm practicing or what I'm thinking, maybe I should hide. Like I was Miss Universe in hiding. And I feel over the years, I've learned to show myself more, but I feel with this initiation, there was a big deepening in that. So to dare to stand for who I am, which is a blend of so many things. And I don't hide that anymore because I love coaching women in their business and I love being in deep ritual in temple spaces, and before I would maybe think, oh, I need to maybe make a choice or focus on one thing, but actually no, I can embrace all of me. And I very much also work in this way with other women to embrace and trust every aspect of the things that you love in your life, every aspect of the things that light you up in your life, to trust that each element of that is what makes this unique combination that is you. And you don't have to hide anything about that. So that's how I feel it strengthened my leadership. And really, this arriving home, I feel relaxed something in my base very deeply. And of course, it goes hand in hand because that's where the Kundalini also starts, it's the base. And when the base is contracted and feeling a bit unsafe, Kundalini can also much easier go a bit chaotic, which happened for me. And I feel since my initiations, there is so much more calm in my body, so much more groundedness, relaxation, and also this knowing that life always has our backs, because look at how I ended up there. Nobody could have ever planned that out. That was just something else, arranging that. And that's an obvious example, but life is doing that all the time for all of us. Life is always already working for us and together with us and bringing us from one synchronicity to the next. And I feel the more we can relax that personal push and trying to control and direct our life, the more that deeper intelligence can take over and start to effortlessly flow the things in our life. It doesn't mean we don't struggle. I mean, I had even these initiations, also difficult situations, and struggles. But I feel even the struggles are there to just deepen us into more of who we are. So that's how it mainly strengthened my leadership, I feel. So just a quick break from this week's episode to let you know that registration is open for my masterclass, 5 Secrets to Trusting Your Intuitive Gifts and Psychic Abilities. This is a 90-minute masterclass to discover the magic and wonders of your intuition. So whether you are doubting your psychic abilities or the things you are energetically or emotionally picking up on, whether you feel fear for the spirit world and you're not sure how to approach that, or whether you experience overwhelm when you go into secondhand stores or into big crowds, this 90-minute masterclass will help you to not only learn to handle your sensitivity, but offers you ways to discover how you can turn your sensitivity into your biggest gift. Because that's what it is, you don't have intuition. You are a deeply intuitive being, and you can train and develop the powers of your intuition so you can weave them in your personal life, in your professional life as a coach, bodyworker, facilitator, or whatever profession you would like to weave it in. And in this 90-minute masterclass, I will share with you ways on how to stop doubting and truly open the channel of your intuition. I will teach you about clairvoyance, clairaudience, clairsentience. I will offer a powerful meditation to meet your spirit guides and your loved ones in spirit so your body knows I'm not making this up. There is a world of spirits available for me with unconditional love and support. And then also, I will share you some of the mistakes that even conscious people make when it comes to their psychic abilities. I cannot wait to meet you in this 90-minute masterclass, which is completely for free. And we start on the 21st of October. The link is below this episode, and I would love, love, love to see you there. Let's get back to the episode. Enjoy.
I was curious, what was your biggest challenge?
I think it's something a bit silly. I think it was the food. The thing is, in Benin, they don't have enough land to grow their own crops. And this is a bit the result of capitalism. The whole country is filled with palm trees for the palm oil and cotton. So they have very little variety in food. So basically it's rice and spaghetti and couscous. And then they have 3 vegetables, which is tomato, onion, which I don't even consider a vegetable, but they do, and cabbage. And they have here and there also more, but these are the main things that they cook with. So after a month of eating that, I was so happy to come home and eat my fresh salads and my Dutch cheese. And
Yeah. Wow.
yeah, that was challenging for me. And I think in terms of initiation, more energetic processes, I think sometimes maybe the language, studying in a different language. But overall, I would say in initiations, I'm just here for it, Even if it feels maybe a bit challenging, like I was sleeping on the floor, there were ants crawling over me and it was hard and my body was hurting. So yeah, that can be challenging, but also it's so beautiful, and there is so much magic in these moments and I just feel like writing a book about it. Like each tool also now I received such beautiful tools. Like I have a snake staff that I received. I have this incredibly magic mat that I can ask questions and it moves to a side to answer me. And I have a really beautiful cowrie shell necklace that came to me. And each object or tool that came to me doesn't just come to me. To give an example, this necklace, the cowrie shell necklace, they consult the oracle system to see in which town they need to go to find me this necklace. Because they don't just buy cowrie shells and make you a necklace. No, it needs to be a necklace that was in the hands of another priest or priestess. So they consult, they say, is it in Cotonou? Is it in Ouida? And they ask. And like that, they found one town and they went there to the town. And then they ask, do we need to go north in the town? Do we need to go west? Do we need to go south? And they go and they end up in this house where this older woman lives. And as she opens the door, they share, we are here to collect a necklace. And it turns out that a priest lived there 200 years ago, and he had a big shrine and had lots of spirits also in his identity. And they buried him, but also they made a separate grave to bury his necklaces. So they open this jewelry grave and they take out this cowrie shell necklace that is fully cowrie shells as they wanted to give me. And then the robe is so old that it's completely done. So they had to wash the shells and make the new necklace. And then they give the necklace to me through a ceremony. So this is one example of such beautiful stories, that they have.
About the snake staff as well. I saw a picture of it. Can you share a bit more about it?
Yes, because my main spirits are the snakes. And when you are crowned, I don't know if that's the right word, but when you are initiated priestess or chief, you receive a few things. One of them is the staff. And for me, because my main spirits are the snakes, and then my main spirits are two snakes, a masculine and a feminine snake, basically like the Kundalini, where you have the feminine and the masculine serpents. This is why these two snakes are represented in my staff. Then also you need a throne. Last time when they said that, a throne, I was like, oh my God, because I'm not like this at all, that I want to be like on a throne or on a stage or things like that. And I said, how am I going to ever take a throne from Benin on the airplane to the Netherlands? It's just a bit crazy. So they made this little throne for me, but it's a little throne that actually fit in my suitcase. And the throne, they make ceremonies with it, so it has its own spirit also. And what happened with this throne is that it was in the shrine where they made it for weeks. And one morning they come into the shrine and the throne is in pieces. And they're like, how is this possible? It's like solid wood. How can that be in pieces? And then they make the consultation because they consult everything with the oracle system. And the oracle system said that my great-great-grandmother, she took it in spirit because she wanted to be re-entering into the tradition as well. Because what happened to my great-great-grandmother, she was the last one practicing Winti, because in Suriname it was called Winti. And then because her and her mother were enslaved, they were not allowed to practice this anymore. So in my first initiation, the night before I received my necklaces, which each necklace represents a spirit, and the spirits that you are initiated in, you receive a necklace from after your initiation. So the night before I received my necklaces, I had this very strong connection with my great-great-grandmother. She was just sitting on my bed. And as she was sitting on my bed, she opens her hands and she passes on her voodoo beads to me, which is traditionally always done. You, as an elderly, pass on your necklaces to your children or grandchildren. And I didn't know. So she passes these necklaces on to me. And the next day I received my actual necklaces. And the oracle system now revealed that she wanted to take this throne in spirit so that she is also again acknowledged and entered into the tradition. So they had to make a new throne for me. And like this, each tool, I can go on forever. Each tool has an amazing story. Just incredible. So much magic, is in this.
I love the interconnectedness with the world through the spirit world. Oh, wow. It's so beautiful how it all is one world and really connects from two ways.
Yes. Absolutely. So I always come with 2 big suitcases back from Benin with so much herbs and tools. And I'm always like, oh, I hope they don't open my suitcase because there's like a throne in there and then the staff and all these things. Yeah.
Found the symbolic so beautiful because a throne is like something really special. It just represents leadership as a woman. And it reminds me of Aset, Isis. And I wanted to know if there is any connection that they shared with you with different tradition of African, because I know that in South Africa, they work also with the Egyptian Aset with like similar deities. And we talked a lot about like snake spirit, but do they talk about also like the deity spirits? Like I know in Ifa it's Oya and Omaya and all this.
Yeah. So the deity spirits and the nature spirits, they're in a way, they're the same, right? Because Yemanja is the spirit of the ocean. Yeah. And then there is all these different spirits that represent something. But I personally don't know any connection to the Egyptian tradition because I haven't spent much time in the Egyptian tradition. So yes, there might definitely be a connection, but I don't know. I can imagine there is a connection for sure. Because when I say I received, for example, my initiation into thunder and lightning is Shango, right? So, or they have different names. So these names like Yemanja, Shango, they are more from the Yoruba tradition. And then in Benin, they have different names for them. So Yemanja is Mami Wata. And like this, they have sometimes in different traditions slightly different names, but they speak to the same spirits, the same deities. Yeah. So I don't know, but it might be interesting to find out. Yeah.
Now that you're initiated, now that you're a priestess, are you only allowed to work with it yourself, or are you also allowed to share certain things, like, for instance, in the courses you give?
Yes. So in the courses I give, I will be mainly focusing on teaching the baths and about the herbs. I will be offering readings with the shells. Because I think it's really easy to blend that with the type of readings I was already doing also, right? And I think the rest will need to reveal over time because I also just got home and I feel now it's time to integrate everything in myself. And then it will be time for me to offer the things. But besides teaching about the herbs, I don't see myself teaching to others, for example, how to do the readings. Because I think there is a certain order in this tradition that I want to respect also. So I think for the coming 3 or 4 years, I will be mainly practicing with everything that I've learned. And maybe after that, also initiate and teach others on how they can work with these things. But the herbs are something that I just love teaching already. So that will stay.
And I'm curious, you coming back to Europe from Africa, and you were mentioning that you felt, like reconnecting to your African roots. But I'm curious, like, how do you feel being initiated into voodoo and now being situated in Europe? Like, is there a community of voodoo practicing people, or do you feel like a little bit alone, or you feel very connected? I'm curious about that.
Yeah, beautiful question. I actually live very close to a big African community here, but I haven't reached out yet. A few reasons. I think I still have the idea that maybe it's not super open, and then I come there like, I don't know, maybe I'm completely wrong, but that is something that has been with me over the last month. So I didn't really go out and see, hey, what's happening here in Amsterdam and can I join maybe some ceremonies? But what I am doing is I'm in very close connection to my voodoo mother, Martine. So we call each other on the phone, and if I need to know something, she does a consultation for me. She regularly sends me a message, or I connect with the family there. Yeah, I think so far that has been enough for me. Also because I know this lineage with this family feels really pure, very beautiful, very loving, very warm. So I've been receiving enough nourishment from that. And here in Amsterdam, I don't know. I don't know yet. So I might need to explore a bit and find out and see. But overall, I would say I don't necessarily long for a home in a Vodou community here. I think I'm very happy with my community of friends that I have in the Netherlands, which are, yes, they are maybe not in Vodou, but they're very mixed. And, we share this location independent lifestyle, and we share having our own businesses, and we share this connection and interest in many different traditions. And I think that's where I feel most at home. Yeah, where I can be all of me.
And I have another question. You were mentioning that this lineage feels very clear and pure. And you were collecting money for somebody else to get, like, for this boy, so that he could get initiated into Vodou too. And I'm curious if you have any knowledge if his initiation was like yours, or if it was different in some way.
Yeah, beautiful question. So I felt very strongly towards the end of my time in Benin that I want to give back also, because I come there, as a Westerner and with enough money to do all the things I want to do in a country where it's not like that. And the initiations are very expensive for Westerners, but even more so for people in Benin. Some people are saving up their whole life and they never even make it to their first initiation. And I don't know why it is like this, but the things that they need for the initiation and the size of the group of people that are involved all together just costs a lot of money. So I wanted to give this, I wanted to give something back. And this is why we raised the money, and we raised much more. In the end, we were able to help 24 kids and young adults instead of only one. His initiation ceremony was his Ifa ceremony, where his identity was revealed. And for a man, so it's not so much about me being a foreigner and him being Beninese, but it was much more about me being a woman and him being a man. And this is something where I sometimes get a little bit rebellious with ancient traditions, many indigenous traditions also. The men throughout history have been more important or in higher leadership ranks than the women. And so with the Yawanawa people, for example, the teachers that I had there were one of the first women in the tribe in history that were initiated as shamans. And now here, there is also change happening, but the men have a much bigger ceremony, actually. So my ceremony took only place inside the compound of Mama Martine. Similar length, both of them are around 2 days. And then the men, they go into the forest and they meet this specific spirit that women are not allowed to meet. So, and they also spent some time in complete darkness, the men. So they were isolated in a room that was completely dark. Yeah, there were some things different, but it was not because I'm a foreigner, but it was because I'm a woman and he's a man.
Does it also work the other way around? That the women do get some specific initiations that the men are not allowed to get in?
Less, I don't know, but from what I've seen, I haven't seen it. No. So, for example, the identity that was revealed in me, they call it one of the master signs. So it's one of the signs that normally, if I was a man, I would become a diviner that uses the oracle system. So I would become what they call there a babalao. But because I'm a woman...
Something different, someone different, special.
Yeah, so the diviners are being trained from age 8 years old for 20 years. And they learn how to work with this oracle system, which is super complex. And they said if I was a man, I had to become a diviner. But because I'm a woman, I'm not allowed to become a diviner. And this is something, I think it's also what we see in many ancient traditions where, yes, ancient traditions have gone from generation to generation, have a lot of power because of that. But sometimes there is also some dogma here and there, So when that happens, my first response is always, I'm going to be the first female diviner, But then later it can also soften and I'm like, I don't really feel like studying 20 years, a super complex oracle system, it's okay. But my Vodou mother is a little bit like me. And she's actually this year going through an initiation that originally was only for men. And she is actually allowed as a woman into this initiation now. So Also in Voodoo, there are changes, just like as in the Yawanawa in South America. Also in Voodoo, there is changes where more women are being included in things where before they were not.
I was curious. You told us that the main animal, the serpent, it was a serpent for you. And for her, it was the mermaid. And I was so, what? A mermaid in the midst of Africa? How?
Yes.
Can you share
Yes.
a little bit more about that?
Yes. I received also the initiation for the mermaid, but it's not my main spirit. And for Mama Martine, our main spirit is the mermaid. And like Dee was sharing earlier, they have the deities of the ocean. So Yemanja is a mermaid spirit also. And there is a really beautiful mythology around the mermaids, actually, in Benin. So they say that all Afro descendants, so descendants of the slaves that have left Africa, have this mermaid spirit because we traveled over the ocean. And they say that all the people, all the slaves that died and were thrown into the water were taken by Yemanja and turned into mermaids. So there's a very strong mermaid mythology there that is, they're very important spirits. So they have this deep connection to the ocean, and they are part snake in a way also, because the tail, you could say, is fish, but is also snake. So they have a very strong interconnected connection with the mermaid and snakes as well. So this is one of the reasons why the mermaids are strongly present there. You see mermaid statues also in Ouida. Strong mermaid presence there.
I'm so curious, like, how did it affect, like, you coming back? How did it affect your relationship? Is there anything, or is it like, you know, like he knows you already that you do like crazy shit, you know? Or like, yeah, how does it affect it?
It's a bit of both. So like my partner always says, I never know how you will arrive home after adventures like this, you know? So we always need this time to get to know each other again and to kind of attune to each other again. Even when I don't go through initiation, but especially if I do go through one, I usually go through some big transformations and we kind of need to get to know each other again. So it's a bit of like, wow, who are you now? And simultaneously, he also, I think he got used to me living this lifestyle, you know, so he also knows that I'm someone that is deeply devoted to my studies and to deepening into myself. But I would say after the first initiation was a bigger integration than now. So in the first one, he was also a bit like, what are you doing? I mean, I literally called him when I was 48 hours in Benin. And I said, I want to extend my stay with 2 weeks and do an initiation here. And he was like, what do you mean? Where are you? Who are these people? Like, what's happening? He didn't understand. Of course, I understand, and he didn't understand. Because it's a bit strange, right? In 48 hours, I call him with this news. So in the beginning, he just wanted to know more, like, what is this tradition exactly? Like, how do they work? Who are you with? Like, what does this mean? What are your responsibilities? Very similar questions to what all of you asked me today. But one thing that he did have for the last 20 years is a deep connection to Santeria. And Santeria is like is one of the traditions that wavered out of Voodoo. So he already knew the spirits. He already knows the tradition in a way, although they're also different, they have similarities. So it was not completely foreign to him. But I did come home completely shaved, like looking like someone completely different. So we needed a bit of time, to integrate that. But I think now he's fine with it and curious also about it, because this time they actually checked which are the main spirits that are with him, which were the same as he was told from Santeria. So that was really beautiful. You know, it was nothing different. We're the same spirits.
But from the side of Voodoo, there's no expectation on the partner of a priestess or high priestess?
Not really, no. Besides that the partner respects, that the partner respects that I am in this tradition, but he doesn't have to be initiated, or he doesn't have to join me even in it. No.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for sharing.
And I think this is important also, I know when I started my spiritual path, I wanted to drag my partners into it. And then the more they were resisting, the harder I was trying to drag them into the things that I was doing. And I think over the years, I learned that, yeah, we have some overlap in the things that interest us. We also have some differences, and that's fine. As long as we can respect each other in that, then it's okay.
And imagine it might also be like a bit weird for the family or something, because it's nothing that we are really used to,
Yeah. I think my family is also quite used to me doing out of the box things. I mean, I'm traveling for 8 years now, living this lifestyle where I went to Brazil, studying with indigenous tribes. I went to India, studied there, did my Vipassana, my yoga trainings, and did my pilgrimage in India, and went to Mexico for my dark retreat. So it's very difficult to get them surprised. Yeah, no, they are very supportive, and maybe some family members are more curious and more involved, and others a bit more like, oh yeah, that's what Nicole does, and it's fine. I'm not really involved in that. But overall, they are very supportive and some very curious also. Yeah, I remember when I called my dad to talk about my first initiation, he was crying. He said, wow, I just feel something feels so right for you being there. And he says, I feel so proud that you're doing this, So he was very touched, very touched. And then I sent my mom this story from the slaves, and all the stages that they went through. And she sent it to her sisters. And so there was also some healing that could happen through the family by me being there. So overall, the integration has been really good. And I created new programs from it. I feel that because I've been mentoring women in their leadership and business a lot, mainly for the last 2.5 years, I would say. I think what the Vodou initiations reminded me of, that this work with the mystery always needs to be at the core of what I do. The mysticism, the temple work. And I still work also with my mastermind and mentoring the women in business. But even in my mastermind, there is a very strong connection to temple work and intuition, and always having that at the center, because it doesn't matter when I started in my business or now when I have the team and became the CEO, I still have the mystery and my intuition at the core, and that's where it's supposed to be. And this, I feel, also was an important integration after my initiations. Any final questions before we close? I really loved your questions so far.
A little question. I don't know if I ever get initiated, but because I have a calling also in the space spirit and everything, which I won't go into. But I remember you had your long hair and you said, oh, apparently I'm not going to cut my hair. And then they shaved your hair. Can you explain why? What happened there? Because I think this hair thing is really interesting for me. Why did you need to go through that?
Yeah. So when I arrived, when I said yes to the initiation, I had no idea what I had said yes to be honest. I just trusted my intuition, and my intuition was very clear. Yes, you're going to do this. And then I arrived, and, it was the sleeping on the floor. And then they said, we're going to shave your hair. And I was like, oh yeah, I have no idea what we're going to do. And then I remember my Vodou mother saying, we can ask the spirits if it's okay to not shave your hair, but I don't like these exceptions, When I do it, I will just do it and go through the initiation as I'm supposed to go through the initiation. And then actually, when they revealed my identity and I had this master sign, they said, we have to shave your head now. We cannot do it differently, because with this sign, we need to really follow the steps and do it well. But I guess you could say with how they call it, it's a moment to be born again. It's interesting because I had the interview recently with a friend who is born again Christian, but it's like, I would say it's almost like a baptism moment maybe in Christianity, or this moment of being born again. So it's like a fresh start where you take off everything that you were and where you become someone new. And this is why they shave the heads. And maybe you've also seen it with Credo, one of the boys that got his initiation. They also shaved his head. And then they bury the hair on the land where the initiation takes place. So it's a moment to be born again, a moment to leave behind who you were and welcome who you are right now. Yeah, that's actually the most simple answer. And I love it. I did it twice in my life now. And it's such a powerful rite of passage, such a powerful rebirth moment. And I already have braids again now, only 7 months after, which is like, it grows back really fast. And I don't know if I will do it again. I don't like the in-between length, I like it when it's very short. And then I like it when I have my curly bush again, but this in-between length, I never know what to do with it. So I'm always braiding then. But that's the reason why they do the shaving.
I'm curious because voodoo feels really rooted in Africa. So I feel like there's curiosity from us, and especially like us that are, like white people from Europe. Like, is voodoo accessible or like open for people who don't have these kind of roots? Like, is this a lineage, a tradition that, I don't know, like could call us?
Yes, for sure. Yeah. I also say that I have this one friend, for example, and he is a Dutch man, very deeply into the Yawanawa tribe in the traditions there. And I think we can have our blood roots and we can also have our soul roots. So sometimes we feel called to traditions that are maybe not in our bloodline or in our DNA, but they're in our soul somehow. And in this family that initiated me, they are open for foreigners as well for people that are not having this African in their blood. But it's always the oracle system that decides if you can do your initiation. So if the oracle system says no, even with me, if it would have said no, I would not have done my initiation. This is the main decider of everything. They consult the oracle and then you will know if you can do your initiation. But I've been talking with Mama Martine to organize maybe in 2025 a pilgrimage to Benin. So there can be like an introduction into voodoo, maybe the voodoo festival, maybe do some purification ceremonies, maybe the Ifa ceremony to reveal your identity. So all those beginnings, that might actually happen in a while. For next year, I'm already too full with other plans, but from 2025, we might start organizing a tour there to Benin for the ones who feel called to get a deeper introduction with this tradition. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah, I feel like a lot of respect because also, due to history of cultural appropriation and stuff, I feel like, wow, this is really something very precious and sacred in a way. And maybe it shouldn't, maybe it shouldn't be open to everyone, but it's also beautiful that it is.
Yeah. Well, in that sense, it's protected because the oracle system decides, right? So I think that's where the selection takes place. It's not that everybody can just do the initiation. Yeah, but it is beautiful and sacred. And I think that for all of us, it could be interesting to feel where are our DNA roots and what indigenous traditions or traditions are connected to that. I think it's super powerful and healing and helps us to embrace more of who we are. But then also to follow your curiosity to the traditions that feel true to your soul, where you feel called to study deeper and explore deeper with. And so far in my life, sure, there's traditions where I resonate more and less. But I think each tradition that I've been with has amazing gifts and amazing sacredness and amazing beauty also. All of them also have their own dogma and their own shadows and their own, things that are maybe less interesting. But yeah, to really, I think I learned over the years also with each tradition to take with me what feels really beautiful and resonates and to leave behind what doesn't. And I think that's also okay.
Yeah, thank you so much. I feel really grateful for you, like sharing with us and also just doing this kind of, like following your calling and doing these things, even though there's so much stigma and so much beliefs held around it. There's like so much shame and stigma really. And I love how you're like reintegrating it. And by this, I feel like it's really such a beautiful gift to everyone doing that. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. Yeah. Thank you so much, ladies. How are you feeling, Ankie and Dee?
like to thank you because I think there is a knowing in me that the African sovereignty is on the rise, not only through like politically at the moment, a lot of things are happening, but also like the spirituality of Africa is to be also seen and understood. And the work that you do is so powerful to restore the absolute beauty of what it is and its authenticity, truth, and absolute power. And not only for themselves, but also for like the rest of the world. And like, you know, everyone has their power and it needs to be seen, and African traditions as well.
Beautiful.
And I must say, even though I'm completely white, and as far as I know, people before me too, I feel so connected with Africa, and I'm really touched by your stories, and I can feel a deep fear inside of me. And the word voodoo it's changing now because of you and how you teach us about it. But yeah, I feel really connected to voodoo and Africa, and I'm feeling really curious. Don't know if I'm feeling called to really dive deeper into it, but I feel touched and I feel grateful for that. I'm grateful for you sharing your experience and shining a different light on it. As you started with, in the Western culture, I think there's so much misunderstanding of voodoo.
Yeah, and I also really want to thank the three of you, because I think it was one thing for me to maybe record an episode and start sharing about the initiations, but I thought this was so much more fun, you know, to just allow you to be curious. And I really want to thank you for taking the time for that, to follow your curiosity and ask me all these questions. I think we co-created a really beautiful episode together like this. And also for the listener, I want to thank you for listening today. And if you have any more questions coming up after listening to this episode, feel free to send me a message. I'm always happy to answer more of your questions. And besides that, I'm going to wish you a beautiful week and see you again in next week's episode. Thank you. Did you receive any inspiration, motivation, or powerful breakthroughs by listening to this episode? Then please share this episode by taking a screenshot and tagging me in your stories at nicole.nima.costeres. I would love to celebrate you, share you in my stories, and it would mean so much to have my work reach more powerful, passionate women like you. Thank you so much, and looking forward to see you next week.